In this short video, we will examine a simple but profound question. Why do you, as an intelligent Christian, disobey Jesus? Why don't you do what Jesus tells you to do in the Bible? The Bible makes it very clear. To be a Christian, you must obey Jesus. For example, the Bible says, "We know that we have come to know Jesus if we obey his commands. The man who says, 'I know him,' but does not do what he commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him." In Luke 12, Jesus also says, "That servant who knows his master's will and does not get ready or does not do what his master wants will be beaten with many blows." The message is clear enough. To be a Christian, you must obey Jesus. So let's look at 5 things that Jesus has commanded you to do in the Bible. Commandment 1. You should love your enemies. The vast majority of Americans claim to be Christian, as do the President and nearly all of the senators and representatives. So here's a question. Why does America have a military when Jesus is so crystal clear about love? In John 13, Jesus says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." In Luke 6, Jesus says, "But I tell you who hear me, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you." In Matthew 5, "You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." And Luke 6 is as direct as can be. Love your enemies. Do good to them. This message is repeated throughout the Gospels. It's beautiful, isn't it? And so simple. We should love one another. We should love our enemies. So why does the United States have a military? Why isn't the Pentagon shaped like a heart? And why isn't the building filled with thousands of people who spread love, friendship, and kindness? Why instead does a Christian nation have a military machine designed to kill millions? Is that what Jesus commanded? Of course not. Jesus makes his second commandment so clear in the Bible. A Christian is supposed to sell everything. Jesus says it directly in Matthew 19. "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven." That sounds so simple, but many Christians refuse to believe it, so Jesus says it over and over again. In Luke 14, Jesus says, "Any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple." In Matthew 6, Jesus says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven." And no one can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve God and money. Matthew 13 talks about the deceitfulness of wealth, and Luke 12 makes it as direct as possible. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Could Jesus be any clearer? Yet Christians ignore him. Why? Why don't you do what Jesus commands? Nowhere does Jesus say that you should carry a 30-year mortgage on a 3-bedroom house. Jesus never tells you to buy a car. If you obeyed Jesus, you would sell it all. But it's not just your possessions that you're supposed to abandon. In his 3rd commandment, Jesus tells Christians to abandon their families as well. Jesus says it one way in Matthew 19, and Luke 14 is even more direct. "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And in the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple." Here's yet another reminder to sell everything, and then Jesus commands you to abandon your family as well. Commandment 4 goes one step further. After abandoning your family, you need to begin self-mutilation. Matthew 5 puts it this way, "You have heard that it was said, 'Do not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away." What does this mean? It's obvious and it's straight from Jesus. It means that Christians who look lustfully at any woman, or watch pornography, or go to strip clubs should gouge out their eyes, or they're going to hell. And most Christians in jail should cut off their hands, since people usually use their hands to commit a crime. Can it get any worse? Yes, it can. Mark 16 contains the most amazing of Jesus' commandments. It tells Christians to drink poison. Here's exactly what Jesus says. "And these signs will accompany those who believe. In my name they will drive out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes with their hands. And when they drink deadly poison, it will not hurt them at all." That's straight from Jesus. If you are a true Christian, you should be able to prove it by drinking deadly poison. So let's review. To be a Christian, you must obey Jesus, and we have seen 5 of his commandments in this short video. Chances are you haven't done any of these things. In other words, you aren't a Christian at all. You disobey Jesus every chance you get. Now here's the question to ask yourself. Why do you ignore everything Jesus tells you to do? Why do you disobey Jesus? You will go to hell for your disobedience. The reason is simple. You disobey Jesus because his commandments are absurd. You know that, and because you're intelligent, you act on your knowledge. The reason you ignore Jesus is because you know that he is wrong. For example, we can't get rid of the military because there are lots of bad people in this world. If you try to love them instead of fighting them, they'll kill you. You can't sell everything because it's insane. You need a roof over your head or you'll freeze to death in the winter. You need a job so that you can pay for your home. You need a car to get to work. You aren't going to hate your family. That's insane too. And why would Jesus tell you in one place to love your enemy and then in another place to hate your family? It makes no sense at all. Cutting off your hand? That's just stupid. Drinking poison? It's suicidal. Admit it. Anyone with any intelligence can see that Jesus is a lunatic. You don't do what Jesus commands because Jesus is crazy. So if you know that Jesus is crazy, and if you show it by constantly disobeying, why do you claim to be a Christian? You might be thinking, I am a Christian so that I will go to heaven when I die. But that's silly. If you want to go to heaven, you have to obey Jesus. Instead, you're ignoring him every chance you get, and rightly so. So here is something to consider. Could it be that you claim to be a Christian because you're afraid of other Christians? Many Christians are very scary people. They don't love one another. Many Christians are filled with hatred, racism, homophobia, and violence. For example, our prisons are overflowing with Christians. Perhaps you're afraid of what Christians might do to you. You might lose your job. You might get arrested. You might be beaten. Your kids could get kicked out of Boy Scouts. You would be shunned by friends and family. The funny thing is, you fear these things from a group of people who are supposed to love everybody. It's a very strange kind of love, isn't it? The whole thing is unbelievable, but think it through. Use your intelligence. By ignoring Jesus' commandments, you guarantee a trip to hell. The hope of heaven is not driving you to be a Christian. You are a Christian because you are afraid of other Christians. There are so many of them, and they are so powerful that you live in fear. Now what? It turns out that there's a much better alternative, and this video is your invitation to think about it. It's called rational thought. Living in fear is no way to live, and the fact is that you have nothing to fear but fear itself. As soon as you admit that, you have started down the road to becoming a rational human being. It is a road to a much better life. Rational people live their lives free from the lunacy of Jesus and his commandments. They live without fear and guilt. For example, rational people don't have to gouge their eyes out as Jesus demands. Rational people never think about drinking poison or abandoning their families. And rational people never worry about that imaginary place that Christians fear most, hell. Would you like to learn more about rational thought? This video is your invitation to learn about rational thinking. Please visit godisimaginary.com and whywon'tgodhealamputees.com. Thank you for your time today.